Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us again. This is Mike and Phil from the Research Triangle PowerShell user group. And we got a little bonus content here from you with Heiko from ScriptRunner. We finished up our meeting and we had a pretty active discussion going on. And Heiko offered to show us some more information about the product. This is going to be specifically rated to queries. So if you watch the first video and you want to see more, join us. Hey, Heiko, thank you for joining us again. Where do you want to start with queries?
Yeah, so the queries are really an important aspect of the whole idea of simplifying the user interface, because in all scenarios where you want to make sure the users are really only able to see what they should be able to select, like Active Directory users or VMs, or in our example from just now, the Azure regions and the Azure sizes. These are all things that are coming that are implemented based on the queries, and queries can come in different types. So we have Active Directory queries, we have Azure queries, which also includes using MS Graph, for example. You can have scripted queries, you can have static queries, and you can have a list of entries, which is basically kind of a CSV file. Now, in the simplest form, the thing that we just saw, where we said, okay, what kind of Azure locations somebody can select when they spin up a new VM, is simply a list where on the left side, we see what is actually visible to the user, and on the right side, that's the technical information. And this concept goes throughout all the queries. On the left side, this is what the user can select, which hopefully is easy enough for the user to understand. And the right one is what we actually use when we execute the scripts, which, for example, means for the Azure sizes, we go in here. This is what we saw, the specification of the VMs, and on the right side, that's the technical information. In this case, very simple, because it's a static information. If we look at things like Active Directory, it could be, okay, I want to have a list of all my mailboxes or of all my OUs, for example, so I can decide what kind of object I want to have in my queries. In this case, it's also, okay, where do I start to search for? What's the search space? What should be visible again? The display value, common name, or it could be some whatever information helps the user to select the right things. And then the value, which is the information that really is being used when we technically run the scripts with the parameters. And then you can have the same thing for Azure Active Directory, and here I have an example. Hopefully it's still there. Which in this case, I have a machine actually running in Azure, which you can see right here. And here I have a query that uses Azure Active Directory information. And it's not just a single parameter. It's what I want to have is a complete JSON object, so I can really take all the information from this JSON object to further use it in my scripts. And I can test this query right here.
So is that query a PowerShell query, or is it this other kind of Azure?
This one here is a directly integrated into ScriptRunner.
Okay.
Of course, you can always have a script that does your Azure query as well. That's actually what was the option before that version that came 2 months ago. And now, to more simplify the Azure scenario, we implemented a specific Azure query type, so you don't have to write it in your scripts, but you can still do it and implement it as a scripted query.
So you've established some kind of integrated queries so that you can directly interface with that, and so you've kind of massaged that so it's more beautified kind of term.
Yes.
But the idea is that previously, or if it doesn't, you could certainly write a PowerShell script and actually have that query do work for you. And there is some structure that kind of says, hey, here's available parameters, here's non-available parameters, here's stuff I'm going to do the behind the scenes, here's stuff I'm going to show the end user or the admin.
Yes. Absolutely. So let's say we provide this built-in functionality, and I will show you a little bit of the details. If that's not enough for you because you want to be more specific, then you always can switch to having your own scripted query where you can exactly control what kind of objects you want to look for, what kind of parameters you need, so it fits to your use case. So in this case, here I have a couple of users here, and it comes back here with the JSON data that the Azure Active Directory is allow me to get back in this case. And if I'm going to the edit mode, you can see here again we looked for the users, but as I said, it could be a graph query, it could be resource graph query, and again, it's the same concept of, okay, what is the information that you want to display, and what is the actual technical information that we want to use when we execute the scripts. So coming back to the query, the scripted query that we just talked about, of course, that's then the other way of using the queries here. You can have any kind of script. So in this case, it is actually going to the Azure Active Directory to come back with the list of my Office 365 users. So if we take a look at this query, which we hopefully will find pretty quickly. I think this is the one. What you see here is, and that's again comes back to this concept of, okay, we have display names and we have technical, we have the parameter values, is we have this SRX environment variable result list and result list 2. Result list, that's the value, the technical information that we use, and again, this is the one that's the in this case the display name that we actually show to the user so that they can select the right data. So as a result, if I'm going back to this one right here, we see, okay, here we have the display name. These are the users on the left side. On the right side, we have in this case, the email addresses. And so
is it just list 1 and list 2, or we can do list 5, 7?
No, this is fixed. So it's exactly these two values that you can use, and with this you can create all kinds of queries, right, for whatever information you want to have, your VMware snapshots, your SharePoint sites, or whatever. So that gives you the most.
The name value pair, was that what the structure is within? Sorry, I'm kind of directing to it, but is a name value pair first and second?
Sorry,
Is it like first list and second list? I got confused with the two lists, or if there's multiple.
Well, it's actually one list with 2 columns, right? So that's actually what it is right here. Okay. And so because it's always related, right? So the information that you want to show to the user and the one that we are using when we're actually then later on actually execute the scripts. And this gives you the control about what is the right information, the right value that we should use when the script gets executed.
So the value needs to be the same. Do you just keep the list the same? Do you just make them the same? So if you didn't separate what the user sees and what the backend sees, if it's the same value, you just make the same list.
Yes. Yeah. Well.
Okay.
Yeah. So you're right. So the values could be the same, but you still would have to maintain the 2 columns because the value is the one that the ScriptRunner uses for the execution, and the other one is to display that in the action. Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. Good.
So based on this, I showed you a little example about this cascading queries already. So you could say a query should be you want to enable a query to be to become part of a cascading query, and you can just do that by setting the option in the query saying, okay, I want to enable the cascading option right here. And what it does in your interface is that then you see the search base from depending on the previous selection of a query. So that's what it actually does right here. Other than that, it's really just a query, but it enables you to really have multiple queries working, so to speak, on top of each other.
So is it just related to a previous query, or is it, can you like based upon like 5 other queries and just whatever's in this kind of like form?
Yeah,
Does it create some?
Yeah, so you could kind of, maybe you could kind of jump back to maybe the 2 or 3 levels up, depending on what search base you're selecting from the previous queries that are part of this action. But typically it's really kind of this step-by-step approach where coming from, like a funnel coming, from or to selecting all the necessary properties so that once everything is put together, now, we can run the script, we can do whatever needs to be done to do things.
Okay, so the flexibility is there. So, if as much as crazy as your mind can think about, you basically, yes, the process is there. You just got to think through it, and you guys are there to help you need, right?
Absolutely. And so it could, another example, just to go back to this static list as well, could be, if I'm having this out of office scenario, which kind of is really, it sounds simple, but it's really interesting for many organizations where they say, I want to enable somebody in HR to, if somebody calls in sick, to enable the out of office notification without giving, having all this hassle of who has access to the mailbox and stuff like that. You can also, of course, have a list of the template of notifications, which could, of course, include HTML, and which also can include variables like the start date and end date, for example. So you could work with this information to make sure that you're not just changing the date of an out of office notification, but really also the content. So it's not coming out of sync, for example. And in order to use the queries in the actions for each parameter, you can select where you want to. Let's maybe go for this example here, like this one, creating a team. Why not? Where you can say, somebody should be able to select the users, which comes back to this listed scripted query right here, where you say, instead of somebody, which would be crazy anyway, to type in the name of the users, this is a scripted query that provides me with the list of my users. In this case, all my users. But again, coming back to this scenario with delegation, where maybe this list might look totally different if it's a user and help desk in Europe or in North America. And again, it would be the same script in the background, but just the query that you select in this action for the North America scenario and for the European scenario would be just different.
So I'm gonna point out here, like what you're saying is that, so effectively you'd create 2 queries in this fashion. And if you had like North America, which they want, last comma first name in this fashion, but the SAM account name in this fashion should be the same. So the result 1 would be, I guess, the SAM account name, and then the result 2 would be the name, and then in Europe it's just a different thing, or same thing, right?
Absolutely.
So 2 separate queries for 2 separate actions, and then they just tie to the same thing, but the underlying code is the same.
Absolutely. So that's exactly what would happen. So I copy the action, and then in this new created action, I would exactly do what you just mentioned. I would say, I'm just switching from this query to another one that helps me, that comes back with the right information, and then nothing has to be changed in the script. It's just the configuration in the particular action, and then this would be the action for North America, and the other one would be the action for Europe. So it would be just also have a different delegation group where you say, okay, this should not be for EMEA, this should be for, or maybe it should be for EMEA, and then that would be the group of people who is able to use that action. And so that gives you the complete flexibility here. And so that's really what the queries are all about. It's really simplifying the usage for the user, and it's to keep you in control about what is actually selectable for these users. And
I think it becomes very valuable, the idea that, you know, you can customize what the user sees along with customizing the forms in which they see those forms. And so that becomes very valuable, especially with a dynamic point of view. And so I certainly appreciate this almost deep dive and kind of talking through it. And even, you know, I was kind of asking leading questions in the regard, because I was looking at some of the in the GitHub thing and looking at the structure, and there's queries there, and going, what is this doing? And it's just returning those two variables, the result set 1 and the result set 2, and going,
yes.
Now I understand it. And so it's fairly straightforward to follow what you're trying to accomplish. You can use other stuff as examples, but this was very valuable to me, and I appreciate the kind of deep dive here.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, so just because I also missed that, because you had the question at the beginning about PowerShell 7. So you could just switch an action from using Windows PowerShell to PowerShell 7, given that you have installed the right modules also for Windows PowerShell 7 and stuff like that, and the scripts are kind of compatible with PowerShell 7. So this is something that you can do here. Another thing that I just quickly want to also show you is the functionality here of library scripts, which means if you have centralized functions, and you would say, okay, whenever I want to do something with an action, I need some functions. You could just configure, you can activate this functionality here, saying, okay, prior to starting the main script, we also preload this script that contains the function, so that if the main script is calling this function, it is available right away. And that, of course, is something which also helps to kind of centralize this the management of your function scripts. And it can help you with connecting, disconnecting to systems, or like in this case, creating this HTML reports, which is available in this library scripts here. The same could be done also with modules, but we see that more happening actually with scripts. I think the reason is because everything happens behind the scenes. It's not really a security issue about having these functions being available in the script, because you don't give it to your users. That's, I think, one of the motivations to put things into modules, so it's kind of hidden, so to speak. But you could still do it as well. Okay, so that's what I wanted to show you in addition to what we covered in the main session, so to speak.
All right, so there we have it. So we have some bonus information, a deep dive into queries, and a little peek behind the scenes and how ScriptRunner works under the covers. Again, thank you for joining us tonight. Thank you to Heiko for giving us this really great in-depth view of how ScriptRunner works. Phil, any closing thoughts?
No, I think it's great. And one of the examples, especially with some of these queries, is that, I think in the previous talk, we talked about using the GitHub channel you can see their code. And so the code is available there, and you can kind of use that as a framework to build your own libraries and functions and queries. And so it is certainly there available to you. So it's good to go.
All right. So with that, I think we're going to call this one a wrap. It's been a really great evening tonight. We've had some awesome content, and we thank everybody for joining us, and we hope you'll see you at the next one. Thank you, everyone. Good night.